Hi everyone, today I want to show you how I created this effect. I was inspired to create it by the fact that I couldn't find a ready-made setup for this effect. I needed especially growing Eevee for the project, which would sort of entire our chosen object and have all sorts of greenery growing on it. The basic principle of this modifier is based on a single node called edge paths to curves. We are sort of converting our geometry into curves. For that, we need our geometry itself. That is not the cube we initially created, but the geometry itself. Next, we need to specify where these curves will come from and where they will go, in which direction they will be created. It can be done in two ways. First, in the start vertices, we specify just some random value, but in data type we put boolean. And in the next vertices index entire, we are adding node shortest edge path. So to find short paths between these points, where these paths will come from, we can create them manually. That is already had this group created, so it doesn't matter where it's created from. Let's say we created group it from there and name it so we remember that it's the group. And then we connected it as an attribute, attribute and vertex. And now we see how our curves were created. That is just simply took our geometry based on our shape, our polygons and grams and so on. But next we can take the trim curve and see how they grow. That is the main principle of this. But that's not what I wanted to show. Firstly, that our curves are near our geometry. We select in our object relative object. And then it seems to me that these curves are kindly too geometry correct. That is the wave around our geometry and such on slightly angles, so we'll have to rework our geometry a little. For this, we created a bunch of nodes called mesh to volume. So we rework our geometry to volume and then back to volume to mesh. Here are settings what I'm entering. They're chosen experimentally, that is for different geometry that can be different, so but for this one I'll enter these values. We can kind of see our geometry does becomes a little clumsy. It is reworked as in any remesh through voxels, and in order to make further calculation a little easier for us, I add adaptivity. Here you have to judge by eye. You need to see how our curves will lie on this geometry. That is where necessary. Blender adds details where it leaves the polygon larger. We will continue to spin this later. But after remesh, our point stopped working. Since we already sort of reworked the geometry, so we can't set this attribute manually. So I can map this slightly more procedural way. We take and create a zero or empty or any other object what will help us do this. There we go, and we should sort of place it in the point where our creation will begin. Let's rename our main object in Eevee, and now we need to add such bunch of position nodes. Let's take our empty. Let's call empty like a start point, and then through vector mass connect them, the location and position. Here we select distance and we indicate cutting it off a little. our distance. Now we'll tweak it and see what the values affects on what these nodes do, what is distance between our position and our empty groups, what we can see influence on it, what kind of mask we are creating, and then we can tighten this mask, loosen it, that it becomes sharper. Let's leave it here for now. Let's leave these values and set a little randomness by adding it the shortest path nodes. Add them a noise node. For now, I'm also just randomizing the value. And then we'll adjust everything. And now we have connected all these nodes so we can see how they influence and create as it were our curves. And now our controls, which we created for empty, it's kind of hides our curves that are within its radius. We can see this radius and what we're creating and which influence on our model we can change mathematically. Firstly, we can control the radius this way, make it larger or smaller. Secondly, we can change the greater than, and then we will contrary cut off this part. And from it, we can already show that that part of our course what we need. But it's work like speak loudly that we did the help of this node, give them the direction. This will be a little more visible later, and with noise, we can change the seed of their generation. For example, slightly increasing the scale. We see that they are constructed slightly different. That is the points connected by these lines are connected somehow differently. This is by changing the scale C, the parameter. You can set multiply, it doesn't matter. We will change the variability of their creation and slightly change the direction on how they will grow later. After this, accordingly, we can also animate and display these curves. And then after that, we can add a node called resample. It's necessary to add to get a more organic look of our course, because without it, they're a little sharper. It have a more sci-fi look, like veins or wires on a chip. I will add a little bit of smoother and look more organic using a sample. But I thought that wasn't enough. I would increase this value and it will change the look like that. But then the more detailed we make the course, the more we can smooth it later through the combination of node like set position and blur attribute. On blur, we set the position of each point. We select vector, and this is in position. We can see how our curves have already smoothed our little, but we can also increase the iteration and see how it's effect on our curves. On the one hand, it makes them smoother, but from other hand, they branch out like a hair. They spread out a little, and the sides, and then they stop clearly fit in our geometry. Yeah, I think it will be also be more visible later. But if we do it curve to mesh and set circle profile, well, The more we blur, the less our curves will envelop our geometry. It will be like they'll pass through it, but then we add the node that fix it too. Okay, that's not necessary. Well, right now we have this scene. It seems to me what have too many of these disparate curves that are too out of place. They can end and cut off. So partly to simplify the project, and secondly to make it more visually pleasant, we do is add node called delete geometry, and there to using random value we can do it. We sort of randomly delete part of our curves. Only we need select splines, not points, to delete. Yeah. Yeah, we are deleting part of our curves, and we kind of make it easier so we have our picture is a little more beautiful. But also I added a branch of nodes to set up that in additional randomly deleting, we could also delete it using by other empty. So I quickly build it together. So this branch of nodes, we take first of all our another empty with which we will partly delete our lines. We throw him here too. We take from him relative location. We will take into the absolute, and through the less than also control the same distance, and then through the boolean which we have already created and deleted, we build this set what we fit into delete geometry. We need feed in our empty, and secondly our random value. And now so it's everything on because we have a large delete value that we scroll here and set how our empty affect our geometry. Well, through the distance. Well, remember I will tell about it like a radius, which is the from point to our geometry. And we scroll through the radius, we see the around the empty, their curves disappear. And this we can remove them like they add him here and adjust them more smoothly. That is, like we simply tweak them randomly, we remove generally or locally. We can see how our curves overlap with our geometry. To fix this, we created connection like this. To move something somewhere, we have the set position, and then through the node sample nearest surface, we are taking exactly ours the geometry we did it in the beginning, and we take the position of the normals. We add value vector, and the normal is a vector, and we will see how it affects on our offset. Okay, everything's screwed up for us. We moved way for now. We need a vector mass, and then we set scale. Let's adjust this node and see how much we need to set it. That is, the higher this parameter, the farther our curves will begin to move away from other geometry. But also in some places they will be curved, therefore this value should not be small but sufficient so that it's straight. They are not straight. We didn't enter it, we move it back a little, we see how our blur value affected, we can adjust it too. so that our curves have the organic look, but also don't cut in our geometry too much. They sort of retain the shape they flow around. This also affected by resampling and the amount of blur too. That is, these two parameters, you also need to look and how they fit on your, especially yours, geometry. How it good will be seen and select the desired results. And we have this setup, but only we should put trim curve in the wrong place. We need to put them before the node where we will translate our course into mesh. So there should be a trim curve here, and we can see how it's growing. So these are roughly settings are adjusted. That's it. Those are the sample settings. Also on this same. Don't forget that our geometry is influenced by the settings of our volume, which we tweaked at the beginning. If we change it, then all paths will change as well. They will cast their paths slightly different. We changed the location of trim curve, so we can how everything slowly grows and it works. And then to add the necessary as it were to adjust the growth of our flowers or any instances on our curves before trim, we need to capture the attribute using that's name's node. This where we'll be setting up splines. We need to capture the splines by their ID. We also want to write down dots. We need our attribute of our spline so that we made it later like our cropped ones, also in width, so that the radius increases by our curves grow. For this, we take the multiply our attribute we received by our factor, by spline parameter. Here we can do a little fine tuning through curve. We have float curve. And also add a random value. So now, knowing that we have the course length and width, we can set this parameter in the scale of our radius. Now, depending on each course ID, we can adjust its radius, its thickness of the beginning of the path. Here will be thicker, and the end of path it will be narrow. And depends on this curve, we can also control the thickness of our lines. Also, when we draw the point attribute, we need this for on each curves. We can create point at which we will plant our seedings. For this, we create a branching, and our original geometry, which was before trim, we transfer once again curve to mesh, to which we also give the same profile, all the same attributes, all the same settings for scale. But beside this, we also give him a spline parameter factor, which we share. That's exactly our meaning from 0 to 1, which will grow like ours, which will grow our line. It's not very clearly for now. Okay, I will add a value what we are responsible for grow. Let's call it growth. And our growth will lead us to trim node. That is when our branches grow, we add the same value to node mesh subtract in relation to our spline parameter. And this one is already, we will use this value, the result of this value, precisely so that during grow, the thicker the branch becomes, that is, the farther it grows, our shoots will appear on it. So they will increase from us from scale 0 to scale 1. Then, for example, let's say then the line is starting growing here before it reach here. This sprout will scale in 0. Then this line reach here, that is like passes through like this. Our flower, the scale of this sprout becomes 1. And we have the flower growing. That's the idea. So what we do next, after curve to mesh, we take this mesh and distribute points on faces. After that, we create an instance on points, and we need to enter our parameter into our scale, which we can immediately multiply. We enter our parameter and multiply it by the value. We need to adjust the scale. We adjust the size of these flowers. For now, I'll make sure that also random. So you will also need to set it based on your instances. I have my instances collected in this collection. We immediately connected them to instance on points and sum it up with all our curves through the join geometry node. We see that the instances are very large. So in order to regulate them, I use our scale in a random value node to set some super small value like 0, 2, or even smaller, 0, 1. Yeah, now we can see the size of our flowers, our instances. We can spin them so that they look in one direction. Now, when we change the value of growth, we see how our flowers grow with the growing of our value. In my paid product, I have taken all the necessary settings what we listed and grouped them into 4 main categories. The topmost sliders let you can animate them. But first, for this work, make sure the fields that are located on the sides. For example, delayed field is delays. Yeah, it can be, say, positioned like this, or you can have the mismatch in the scale of the objects and the fields themselves, and they won't work correctly. For example, if the static start point is too far away of your object, too small or too large, it won't work correctly. First, make sure they're an appropriate distance. Also here in a field object selection, you can adjust the start field distance and delete field distance. This parameter also be tweaked and will be effect on strange of these fields. So if you set up all good, this object disappear from one side and appear on other. They appears too. It essentially forces from appear from this certain area. But this field is necessary, meaning they need to start growing from somewhere. Right now it's standing on the edge of the ear and they somewhere appear from there. Next we'll setting up our remesh settings. I made the switchers. What we can be sure, we can turn off the mesh, or we can turn off the curves, or we can just see everything without mesh. For the firstly, we can do remesh. you can see the button debug. From the complexity of our base mesh will determine the complexity of our wines. Essentially, we are making our wines from this mesh. I have set up some basic settings. What's worked is for me in the most cases. Here, when you turn on the wine, for example, if we are setting up here, we make sure it doesn't go anywhere. To do this, we adjust the curve gap to more move it away, or in other way to bring it closer. Here we can also tweak the curves blur to soften our curves more or make them more geometric and sharp. We can also tweak the radius of our curve to make them thicker, depending of your scale, on your needs, your base mesh scale, and so on. Once we have set up the basics, we can also tweak the curve generation seed. If you are not happy with how it winds is growing, well, it's not increased, but just simply change it and see which option suits us better. Once we find suitable options, we can adjust the reduction, of course. If it's set to 0, will be too many of them. But if you change it to 0, it's we're removing them completely. We are looking some kind of happy medium, so it doesn't look too like overgrow. I usually set it from 0.8 to 0.9, for example. That might be it depends on your goals. Next, we'll work with instances. To do that, you enable them, and I created a folder here where I put in you can replace of mine. Also, don't forget adjust their scales, because to match the scale of monkey at my instances, I had to set the minimum scale and like this, and maximum scale to 0.1. You can tweak this scale on your instances, what you gave as an input. Now, once you found the size, you can also tweak the rotation. They will be branched off slightly from their base direction. They are located perpendicular the normals of our base object, that is along basically they stand like this. We rotate them and turn it on the minimum and maximum angle from that perpendicular. I stitch 0, 5 and 2. You can rotate them and see how it works to you. If you are not satisfied with this direction, the rotation seat also randomly changes their position based on noise, how well they are facing, density factor on instances, how many of them. Why I don't tweak them often. Basically, you manipulate the distance and menu values. This is how far apart they will be. So essentially set this gap. Right now it's set like 0.6. We can set it to 0.3 and we'll see how the gaps are filled. But also if we don't work to tweak the gaps, we can also increase numbers using density max. For example, is to 800 and distance between them won't increase, but their number will. I also added the ability to control them through this null object. Use animation button. It's a custom property field. We can control our flowers. That is how far flower open. Additionally, the fact what we have the flower can be animated like instance, but also as it grows, as our grow factor increases, they change their scale. As soon as the vine begins to grow, our instances begin to appear, starting from a 0 scale and going to 1. But our instances can also be additionally animated in time that our grow, and even animated independently. And so you set up, and this is what you want and your desired result, so it's more organic. I also add a collection with the names of materials. So there's the base material of monkey, the base material of our wine, leaves inside of the flower, leaf material, and also material of stem of the flower itself. There are small bug related the material settings for objects you're applying the material. There are two ways to solve it. For example, you can duplicate object and disable mesh in the modifier. Then you get the only vines, and second duplicate it's just the mesh. Or you can set in your materials not texture coordinate and mapping, but simply an attribute, and manually enter your UV map name. Then you connect via vector and the material work. All these materials can be adjusted to suit your needs. And I hope it helps you to realize your ideas. Thank you.